spot. What brings you back to the great American race?
Well, I think it's fantastic. It's great for the country. Our country is doing well again, and we have spirit all over the world. There's spirit again. We brought it back, and it's been less than 4 weeks. So you'll see what we do in a little period of time. It's going to only get better, but this is very exciting.
You brought your granddaughter. I know some of your other family members are here. You get to take a ride around in the Beast. What is that like?
I'll let you know in about 2 minutes because they're going to be going quite quickly, I understand.
You just got to meet some of the drivers. Are you going to get on the radio again and talk to them before the start of this?
And I say they have a lot of courage doing this. It's I see it, and I've been here, and they have a lot of guts, as they would say.
Mr. President, enjoy your time.
Thank you very much. Great.
Mike.
Thank you, Jamie. What a day in Daytona, the 67th annual Daytona 5.
Welcome back to Hannity, and we are back at the White House, and here's part 2 of my exclusive interview with President Trump and Elon Musk. Take a look. This is the $1 million or $1 billion, I'm among billionaires, question. So you have all of this going on, and you stop, in a way. You're still doing it, and you partner with him. And this is what you get for it from the Democrats. You get, nobody voted for Elon. Well, nobody voted for any of your cabinet nominees. Okay, people are dying because of Doge cuts. I'll give you a chance to respond to all that. What Doge is doing is illegal. Elon Musk is more street vernacular for a male body part. It's a constitutional crisis.
Okay. Why are they reacting like this?
Well, first of all, do you give a flying rip, number one? And
well, I guess we must be over the target or doing something right. You know, if like they wouldn't be complaining so much if we weren't doing something useful, I think. What all we're really trying to do here is restore the will of the people through the president. And what we're finding is that there's an unelected bureaucracy. Speaking of unelected, there's a vast federal bureaucracy that is implacably opposed to the president and the cabinet. And you look at, say, D.C. voting, it's 92% Kamala. Okay, so we're in 92% Kamala. That's a lot.
They don't like me here either.
I think about that number a lot. I'm like 92%. That's basically almost everyone.
Yeah.
And so, but how can you, if the will of the president is not implemented, and the president is representative of the people, that means the will of the people is not being implemented. And that means we don't live in a democracy, we live in a bureaucracy. And so I think what we're seeing here is the thrashing of the bureaucracy as we try to restore democracy and the will of the people. Is this making sense? I mean,
no, of course it does. I mean, to me, if you look at our framers and our founders, and you really become a student of history, Mr. President, and we've had conversations both on air and off air. And if we talk about constitutional order or transformational change, nobody can argue that what's happening here is it's going at the speed of light. But however, what were the principles of our framers and our founders? They wanted limited government, greater freedom for the people. And we'll get to the specific cutting of waste, fraud, and abuse. That is your goal, is it not?
Yeah, and my goal was to get great people. And when you look at what this man has done, I mean, it was something. I knew him a little bit through the White House. Originally, I'd see him around a little bit. I didn't know him before that. And I respected what he did. And he fought hard. You know, he was maybe questioned for a while. He was having some difficulties. It was not easy doing what he did. I mean, how many people have started a car company and made it really successful and made a better car where it's, you know, beating these big companies that's all they do is cars? I mean, it's really amazing the things that he's done. But I didn't know it as much then as now. I mean, the fruits have sort of taken hold. But I wanted great people. And he's a great person. He's an amazing person. He's also a caring person. You know, he uses the word care. So they sign a contract in a government agency, and it has 3 months, and the guy leaves that signed the contract, and nobody else is there, and they pay the contract for 10 years.
Yeah.
So the guy is getting checks for years and years and years, and he's telling his family, obviously, maybe it was crooked, maybe he paid to get the contract, or maybe he paid that they didn't terminate it. But, you know, we have contracts that go forever, and they've been going for years. and they're supposed to end in 3 months or 5 months or 2 years or something, and they go forever. So the guy is either crooked, you know, where he knew this was going to happen, or he's crooked because he's getting payments that he knows he shouldn't be getting. But they're finding things like that. They're finding things far worse than that. And they're finding billions, and it will be hundreds of billions of dollars worth of fraud. I say waste and abuse, but fraud, waste, and abuse. And he's doing an amazing job. And he attracts a young, very smart type of person. I call them high IQ individuals, and they are. They're very high IQ and high IQ. And when they go in to see the people and talk to these people, you know, the people think they're going to pull it over. They don't. These guys are smart, and they love the country. You know, there's a certain something. But he uses the word care. So people have to care. Like when I bought Air Force One, I negotiated the price. It was $5.7 billion, and I got them down to $1.7 billion. Now, they're not building the plane fast enough. I mean, they're actually in default. Boeing, they're supposed to have been building this thing forever. I don't know what's going on. We don't build the way we used to build. You know, we used to build like a ship a day, and now to build a ship is like a big deal. And we're going to get this country back on track. We can do it, but so many things. It takes so long to get things built and get things done. And a lot of it could be something we've been discussing. The regulators go in and they make it impossible to build. They make it very difficult to build anything, whether it's a ship, a plane, or a building, or anything. And some of them do it because they want to show how important they are. Some of them do it maybe because they think they're right. They use the environment to stop progress and to stop things. It's always the environment. It's an environmental problem. It's not an environmental problem at all. But they do a lot of things. And by the way, speaking of that, Lee Zeldin is going to be fantastic in the position. It's so important. He could take 10 years to approve or disapprove something, or he could do it in a month. You know, just as good.
Sure.
And I think you're going to see a fantastic job done by him. He's a tremendous guy.
Newt, you echoed something when I just met you, and it was very similar to what Newt has been saying, that he brought this country to the dance. This is the opportunity to be transformational and to have, I would argue, the most consequential presidency if we really dig down and do something that had never been done before, and that is get rid of this bureaucracy. And I'm going to get to the specifics. You say the same thing. It's not done yet. And what do you mean by that?
I mean, winning the election is really the opportunity to fix the system. It is not fixing the system itself. So it's an opportunity to fix the system and to restore the power of democracy. And, you know, people, like, it's funny how often, when these attacks occur, the thing that they're accusing the administration of is what they are guilty of. They're saying that things are being done unconstitutional, but what they are doing is unconstitutional. They are guilty of the crime of which they accuse us.
That's always the first thing they do. He's in violation of the Constitution. They don't even know what they're talking. Well,
it's absurd.
Know. It's just a con job. It's a big con job. And they're so bad for the country, so dangerous and so bad. And the media is so bad. When I watch MSNBC, which I don't watch much, but you have to watch The Enemy on occasion, the level of arrogance and cheating, and they're just horrible people. These are horrible people.
They tell conspiracy theories.
And they start up with the Constitution. They couldn't care less about the Constitution. CNN, likewise. I mean, I watch them asking questions with, you know, the hatred with the. I said, "Why are you asking the question with such anger? You're asking me a normal question, but you see the bias. The bias is so incredible. Those two are bad. PBS is bad. AP is bad. CBS is terrible. I mean, CBS now, they changed an answer in Kamala. They asked her some questions. She answered them like, you know, a low IQ person, the opposite of him, the absolute opposite. But she gave a horrible answer. They took the entire answer out and they put another answer that she gave 20 minutes later into the as the answer. I've never even heard of that. I thought I heard of it all.
I'm going to, just for the sake of saving time, because I could spend, and I've done this on radio and TV, I can spend an hour finding the outrageous amounts of money being spent abroad, like USAID, and I just want to mention a couple, but I'm going to scroll it.
Well, I guess at a high level, I think it's what the president mentioned earlier, which is that in order to save taxpayer money, it comes down to two things: competence and caring.
Right.
And when the president was shown the outrageous bill for the new Air Force One, and then negotiated it down, if the president had not applied competence and caring, the price would have been 50% higher, literally 50% higher. The president cared, the president was competent, the price was not 50% higher as a result. And so when you add more competence and caring, you get a better deal for the American people.
But we were talking about this yesterday, give me thousands of bills. I could pick any one of them.
Yes, exactly.
But I could take all 1,000. And let's say it's a bill for $5,000, just $5,000, and it's done by some bureaucrat. And if he would say, I'll give you 3, I don't want to pay you 5, it's too high, I'll give you 3. But they don't do that. If a guy sends in a bill for $5,000, they pay $5,000. They expect to be cut. Everybody expects to be cut. When you send in a bill, you expect to be cut. They send in the bill higher for the most part. This is true with lawyers, legal fees. When they send in legal fees, I can cut. I wish I had the time. I would save so, but I could cut these bills in half, much better than half. But you offer people a much lower number because you know they actually put fat. I'm not even saying it's like a way of business. They put more on because they expect to be negotiated. When you send in a bill to the government, there's nobody to negotiate.
Yes.
You send in a bill for $10,000 and they send you a check back for $10,000. If you would call them and said, we'll give you 5. No, I need more than 5. We'll give you 5. I'm not going to pay any more than 5. Make it 6. No, I'm not going to make it 6. And you'll settle for $5,500. You've just cut the bill almost in half. And it took like 2 minutes. But none of that's
Someone
done.
call that the art of the deal?
But that's caring. No, it's not even the art of the deal. It's caring. He uses the word. It's caring.
Yeah.
It's a certain competence, but I think it's more caring than competence.
If you add either ingredient, either competence or caring, you'll get a better outcome. But it stands to reason that if you don't have competence, you don't have caring, you're going to get a terrible deal. And the problem is that the American taxpayers have been getting a terrible deal because look at the last administration. Can any reasonable person say that the last administration was either competent or caring?
But they lied to us and said that Joe didn't have a cognitive decline.
They fully lied.
They said the borders were closed. They said that the borders were secure. They said that, they said Obamacare would save.
They flat out lied.
They flat out lied.
Insane.
So Daytona was fantastic. The crowd was amazing. The people love that sport, and they're wonderful people that run it. And they had a little rain delay, but we'll go home and watch it, I guess, or some of you will, and others will try and create peace throughout the world. Do you have any questions, please?
Sir, did you speak to Secretary Rubio this morning?
I did.
What is the latest with the negotiations in Saudi Arabia? What's he taking?
We're moving along. We're trying to get a peace with Russia, Ukraine, and we're working very hard on it. It's a war that should have never started.
Do you expect Zelensky to be involved in these conversations? What will his role be?
I do. He will be involved, yes.
Mr. President, would you allow the Europeans to buy U.S.-made weapons for Ukrainians?
Yeah.
So Zelensky said today that Russia is going to wage war on NATO. Do you agree with that? Do you have any concerns about?
No, I don't agree. I don't agree with that. Not even a little bit.
Vice President Vance said that the United States would potentially take military action against Russia if they won't come to an agreement. Do you agree with that stance?
I don't know if that's what he said. I don't think he said that.
Based on your conversations with President Putin, what do you think he wants ultimately in Ukraine?
I think he wants to stop fighting. I see that. We spoke long and hard. Steve Witkoff was with him for a very extended period, like about 3 hours. I think he wants to stop fighting. They have a big, powerful machine. You understand that. And they defeated Hitler and they defeated Napoleon. You know, they've been fighting a long time. They've done it before. And but I think he'd like to. I think he would like to stop fighting.
Do you think he wants the whole of Ukraine, or just what do you think he wants in terms of
territory? No, I think he wants to stop. That was my question to him, because if he's going to go on, that would have been a big problem for us, and that would have caused me a big problem because you just can't let that happen. I think he wants to end it, and they want to end it fast. Both of them. And Zelensky wants to end it too.
Sir, when do you think that could actually happen? When do you think the fighting can stop?
Well, we're working to get it done. I mean, you know, it's too bad it started. It would have been a lot easier to end it before it started, right? But it started because we had an incompetent president that he didn't know what he was doing. That should have never started. That war was so easy to stop. Remember this, that under Bush, they took a lot. Under Obama, they took a lot. Under Biden, they're trying to take the whole thing. And under Trump, they took nothing. Nothing was gone. Not even a little bit. So it's too bad. It's really too bad. A lot of people are dead right now that should be alive, and a lot of cities are destroyed that can never come back like they were. Those beautiful golden domes and all of the multicolored domes that were 1,000 years old, they're all laying in, you know, just shattered. So it's very sad. They ruined the culture.
They're beginning phase 2 of the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. What's going on there? Have you been briefed on the latest relating to that?
I have been briefed. I told Bibi, you do whatever you want because, you know, my statement was they got to come back. Now, the reason I made that statement because they said they weren't going to deliver, they were not going to deliver the people that they said they were going to deliver, that they agreed to deliver. And they did agree to do that, but they broke that agreement. When I made the statement, they delivered everybody plus an American. Now, the good news is they look like they're in pretty good shape because the people from the week before didn't look like they were in good shape. They looked like Holocaust survivors, frankly. Horrible. Whatever happened to them was horrible. But that'll be up to Israel what the next step is in consultation with me.
So to use these weapons for that you've now allowed to be shipped, given the fact that there's this ceasefire supposed to be in effect, why ship those big bombs now?
Peace through strength. You understand that, right? It's called peace through strength. You know, they contracted for those weapons a long time ago in the Biden administration, and then Biden wouldn't deliver the weapons. But I look at it differently. I say peace through strength. They were sitting there. Nobody knew what to do with them. They bought them. But I believe in that very strongly.
So do you have an update on your...
The European Union is talking about banning food imports from the U.S., kind of along the lines of your reciprocal tariffs. It's like the reciprocal tariffs. They don't like the
That's all right. I don't mind. Let them do it. Let them do it. They're just hurting themselves if they do that. I can't imagine it, but it doesn't matter. We're having reciprocal tariffs. Whatever they charge, we charge. Very simple. If a certain country like India, which is very high tariff, if they charge us X dollars, we charge them X dollars. It's all right. It's a fair thing to do. Even the media said it was fair. And it's going to be very good for the United States.
Do you have an update on your timing of your meeting with Putin in Saudi Arabia?
No, there's no time set, but it could be very soon.
Like this month?
Well, it'll be soon. We'll see what happens. But they're meeting right now. And that's more. I mean, this should have been done 4 years ago, 3 years ago before it started, but it should have been done immediately after it started, as opposed to now, 3 years later.
Egg prices have reached an all-time high. What's your administration? Egg prices have reached an all-time high.
It was a long, before I ever got here, it was at an all-time. This didn't start. Remember, I've been here for 3 weeks. And when you saw the inflation numbers, I've been here for 3 weeks. I have had nothing to do with inflation. This was caused by Biden. I had 4 years of virtually no inflation. So I'm just taking over. But I'll tell you what, this country has made more progress in the last 3 weeks than it's made in the last 4 years. And we're respected again as a country. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right, guys, let's go.
I got to start with this. So he's working for free with Doge. He's kind of put a lot of his life on hold. And you sued Twitter a number of years ago. You just made him pay you $10 million?
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
Well,
That's
I
right.
sued from long before he had it.
Yeah.
And I mean, they really did a number on me, you know. And I sued, and they had to pay. They paid $10 million settlement.
You're okay with that?
I mean, I left it up to the lawyers and you know the team running Twitter. So I said, you guys do what you think is the right. It makes sense.
I think it's funny.
I think it's a very low. I was looking to get much more money than that.
So you gave him a discount when the lawsuit.
He got a big discount. I don't think he even knows about it.
He's become one of your, if you read and believe the media, he's become one of your best friends. He's working for free for you.
Well, I love the president. I just want to be clear about that.
You don't care about that.
I know. I love the president.
You love the president.
I think President Trump is a good man, and he's, you know.
It's nice the way he said that. You know, there's something nice about it.
It really is.
It is.
You know, because I mean, the president's been so unfairly attacked in the media. It's really outrageous. And I've at this point spent a lot of time with the president, and not once have I seen him do something that was mean or cruel or wrong. Not once.
You know, I've known him for 30 years.
Yeah.
And I've never seen anybody take as much as he's taken.
Yeah.
And we've discussed this, and I'm like, how do you deal with it?
Did I have a choice?
Well, you would say that to me. I'm like, what am I going to do? Worry about it? And, you know, and then culminating in 2 assassination attempts, which resulted in your endorsement.
Well, I was going to do it anyway, but that was
it.
Precipitating event. Yeah.
That speeded it up a little bit.
Yeah.
The day of the assassination.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It sped it up, but I was going to do it anyway.
Mr. President, with your indulgence, I'm convinced that people only know a little bit about Elon. I don't think they know everything about Elon, because as I studied and prepared for this interview, I learned a lot about you that I didn't know. I think people will think about Tesla. Democrats are demonizing you and trying to make the country hate you. I just want people to understand you a little bit better, and the person that you've gotten to know and have now put a lot of trust in.
Sure.
And, you know, just let's go over a little bit of your bio, starting with PayPal and how you became involved in Tesla and SpaceX and Neuralink and all these.
Take a while. I mean, you know, I think the way to think of me is like I'm a technologist, and I try to make technologies that improve the world and make life better.
Your shirt.
Yeah, and that's why I like my T-shirt says tech support, because I'm here to provide the president with technology support. And now that may seem like, well, is that a silly thing? But actually, it's a very important thing, because the president will make these executive orders, which are very sensible and good for the country, but then they don't get implemented. You know, so. If you take, for example, all the funding for the migrant hotels, the president issued an executive order where, hey, we need to stop taking taxpayer money and paying for luxury hotels for illegal immigrants, which makes no sense. Like, so obviously, people do not want their tax dollars going to fund high-end hotels for illegals, and yet they were still doing that even as late as last week. And so, you know, we went in there and we're like, this is in violation of the presidential executive order. It needs to stop. So what we're doing here is one of the biggest functions of the DOGE team is just making sure that the presidential executive orders are actually carried out. And this is, I just want to point out, this is a very important thing, because the president is the elected representative of the people. So he's representing the will of the people. And if the bureaucracy is fighting the will of the people, and preventing the president from implementing what the people want, then what we live in is a bureaucracy and not a democracy.
You're both aware, you have to be keenly aware, that the media and the punditry class, not that, you know, I think you've proven they have no power anymore, because they threw everything they had at you and they didn't win. And that was, you know, the New York Times, Washington Post, 3 networks, every late night comedy show, 2 cable channels. They just threw everything, lawfare, weaponization.
Sure.
And now I see they want you two to start, they want a divorce. They want you two to start hating each other. And they try, President Elon Musk, for example. You do know that they're doing that to you.
Oh, I see it all the time. They tried it, then they stopped. That wasn't. They have many different things of hatred. Actually, Elon called me. He said, you know, they're trying to drive us apart. I said, absolutely. No, they said, we have breaking news. Donald Trump has ceded control of the presidency to Elon Musk. President Musk will be attending a cabinet meeting tonight at 8 o'clock. And I say, it's just so obvious. They're so bad at it. I used to think they were good at it. They're actually bad at it, because if they were good at it, I'd never be president. because I think nobody in history has ever gotten more bad publicity than me. I could do the greatest things. I get 98% bad publicity. I could do, outside of you and a few of your very good friends, it's like the craziest thing. But you know what I have learned, Elon? The people are smart. They get it.
Yeah, they do, actually.
They get it. They really see what's happening.
Yes.
And at the end of this interview, what I would like is I want people to know the relationship and know more about you. What is the relationship, Mr. President?
Well, I respect him. I've always respected him. I never knew that he was right on certain things, and I'm usually pretty good at this stuff. He did Starlink. He did things that were so advanced and nobody knew what the hell they were. I can tell you in North Carolina, they had no communication. They were wiped out. Those people were, you know, they had rivers in between. Land that never saw water, all of a sudden it was a river and a vicious, like rapids. People were dying all over. They had no communication. They said, "Do you know Elon Musk?" They didn't really know I knew him. I said, "Yeah." He said, "Could you get Starlink?" It's like the first time I ever heard of it. I said, "What's Starlink?" A communication system that's unbelievable.
I have it.
Yeah, and he said, I called him and I said, "Listen, they really need it." And he got like thousands of units of this communication, and it saved a lot of lives. He got it immediately, and you can't get it. I mean, you have to wait a long time to get it. But he got it to him immediately, and I said, "That's pretty amazing," and I didn't even know he had it. We watched the rocket ships, and we watch Tesla. I think, you know, something that had an effect on me was when I saw the rocket ship come back and get grabbed, like you grab a beautiful little baby. You grab your baby. It just
hug the rocket.
I've never seen
everything needs a hug, including rockets.
And he said, you know, you can't really have a rocket program if you're going to dump $1 billion into the ocean every time you fly. You have to save it.
Right.
And he saved it. First time that I've ever seen that done. And nobody else can do it. If you look at the U.S., Russia, or China, they can't do it. And they won't be able to do it for a long time. He has the technology. So you learn, I wanted somebody really smart to work with me in terms of the country, a very important aspect. Because, I mean, he doesn't talk about it. He's actually a very good businessman. And when he talks about the executive orders, and this is probably true for all presidents, you write an executive order and you think it's done. You send it out. It doesn't get done. It doesn't get implemented. They don't implement it. Maybe they're from the last administration, and they are in some cases. You try and get them out as fast as you can. But I could, as soon as he said that, I said, you know, that's interesting. You write a beautiful executive, and you sign it, and you assume it's going to be done, but it's not. What he does is he takes it, and with his 100 geniuses, he's got some very brilliant young people working for him that dress much worse than him, actually.
Yeah,
they dress in just T-shirts. You wouldn't know they have 180 IQ.
Wait a minute. So he's your tech support.
No, he is.
I actually
but he's much more
support.
than that.
I actually am tech support, though. But
he gets it done. He's a leader.
Yeah.
He really is. He gets it done. You get a lot of tech people, and you have people that are good with tech, but he gets it done. You know, I said in real estate, you had guys that would draw beautiful renderings of a building, and they'd draw the rendering. It would be great, and you say, great, when are you starting? But they were never able to get it built. They couldn't get the financing. They couldn't get the approvals. It would never get done. And then you have other guys that are able to get it done. You know, they could just get it done. I was in real estate. Same thing in this. He gets it done. So when he said that, he said, you know, when you sign these executive orders, a lot of them don't get done, and maybe the most important ones. And he would take that executive order that I'd sign, and he would have those people go to whatever agency it was. When are you doing it? Get it done, get it done. And some guy that maybe didn't want to do it, all of a sudden, he's signing. He just doesn't want to be bothered.
Do a lot of those executive orders have to be codified into law? You need the Republican Congress
and
to follow
will be.
up?
A lot of them will be,
They will.
But look, in the meantime, we have 4 years. The beauty is we have 4 years. That's why I like doing it right at the beginning. Because an executive order is great. I mean, the one problem, it's both good and bad. Because when they did all these executive orders, I've canceled most of them. They were terrible. I mean, we're going to go radical left communist. Okay, it was crazy. Their executive orders were so bad. If they ever got them codified, you'd never be able to break them. So the damage that Biden has done to this country, and it's not even Biden, it's the people that circled him in the Oval Office, okay? But the damage they did to this country, in terms of, let's say, open borders, you know, there's so many things, but open borders where millions of people poured into our country, and hundreds of thousands of those people are criminals. They're murderers, They're drug dealers, they're gang members, they're people from prisons from all over the world. And we have a great guy, Tom Homan, and he is doing so incredibly. You saw the numbers, they're now like 96%.
95%.
He is a phenomenal guy. And Kristi Noem is doing an unbelievable job. And he wanted her. He said, she's so tough. And I said, I don't think of her as that way. You know, she's very nice. He said, no, she's so tough. And she is. I see with the horses, she's riding the horse. Let's go. She's great. But the team we have is really unbelievable. But those executive orders, I sign them, and now they get passed on to him and his group and other people, and they're all getting done. We're getting them done.
Let me go back a little bit to your background, because it's beyond impressive. You were the chief engineer, for example. You were an early believer in Tesla. You became the CEO, and then the chief engineer, which was phenomenal. SpaceX, same thing, which is unbelievable. I mean, you were the first company, private company, to send astronauts successfully into space. First private company to send astronauts into orbit.
Yeah.
That's pretty deep.
He's going to go into orbit soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, he's going to go to Mars. He's
Starlink.
At some point.
Huh?
Yeah.
Is in over.
I mean, they always ask me, like, do you want to die on Mars? And I say, well, yes, but not on impact.
Starlink is in 100 countries. This is going to be hard. I feel like I'm interviewing two brothers here.
You go ahead.
Star Shield, which could be used for national defense.
Yeah, it is already being used for national defense.
Then you have a, what is it called? Optimus, a part of Tesla.
The robot, yeah.
A robotic arm. Then you have an AI arm. And then you have something that really fascinated me, and it's called Neuralink.
Yes.
You might help the blind to see,
yes,
and people with spinal cord injuries, that they can recover, where in the past, how close is that becoming a success?
Neuralink, we've implanted Neuralink in 3 patients so far who are quadriplegics, and it allows them to directly control their phone and computer just using their mind, just by thinking. It's like, so we call this product telepathy. So you control your computer and phone just by thinking, and it's possible to actually control the computer and phone faster than someone who has working hands. Then the next step would be to add a second Neuralink implant past the point where the neurons are damaged, so that somebody can walk again, and so they can have full body functionality restored. And
you like Bobby, right?
I like Bobby, actually. Yeah, I think I supported Bobby Kennedy. I think he's unfairly maligned as someone who is anti-science, but I think he isn't. He just wants to question the science, which is the essence of the science. The scientific method fundamentally is about always questioning the science.
Well, they didn't tell us the truth about COVID.
Correct.
That's for sure.
Yes.
And we learned a lot with the Twitter files. And that just then raises a question. You're the richest man in the world. You may not like that part. Yeah. You're pretty competitive.
It's neither here nor there.
I've known you a long time. But
that's why.
But he's on your team. Well, that's true. He can't top that.
He's good. You know, I wanted to find somebody smarter than him. I searched all over. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
You really tried hard.
I couldn't find anyone smarter, right? So we had it for the country.
But this is the thing.
We settled on this.
Well,
guy.
thanks for having me.
So
I'm just trying to be useful.
But this is the interesting. This is where we are as a society, and I hate to do this to you, but I'm going to do it anyway. You're doing all of these things. Nobody at Doge gets paid a penny, correct?
Well, actually, some people are federal employees.
Some are, okay.
Yeah,
they're helping.
But it's fair to say that the software engineers at Doge could be earning millions of dollars a year, and instead of earning a small fraction of that as federal employees.
Okay, so
and they're very committed people.
So
yes.
You're committed to helping the blind see, people with spinal cord injuries recover.
Yes.
You're committed to getting to Mars. You're committed to rescue. You're going to help rescue next month 2 astronauts that I think were abandoned. They dispute that in an interview.
At the president's request, or instruction, we are accelerating the return of the astronauts, which was postponed, kind of to a ridiculous degree.
They got left in space.
They've been there. They were supposed to be there 8 days. They're there almost 300.
Biden.
They were yes, they were left up there for political reasons, which is not good.
Okay, it's not good. Now, if I had the weight of the pressure of doing that successfully on my shoulders, I think I'd be, But when we spoke before we did this interview, you are very confident. You think this will be a successful mission.
Well, we don't want to be complacent, but we have brought astronauts back from the space station many times before, and always with success. So, as long as we're not complacent.
When are you going to launch?
I think it's about 4 weeks to bring them back.
About 4 weeks?
Yeah.
And
we're being extremely cautious. Yeah.
You now have the go-ahead.
Yes. Well, thanks to you.
They didn't have the go-ahead with Biden.
What's that?
He was going to leave him in space. I think he was going to leave him in space.
Well, it's like
when
we were growing up, lost in space.
Yeah, he didn't want the publicity. Can you believe it?
Unbelievable. And so
yeah.
I want to echo something that the president said and then ask an overarching question. So people get hit with Hurricane Helene. They have no communication with the outside world. You come to the rescue. You donated that, I believe?
Yes.
Okay. You donated to the people.
He saved a lot of lives in North Carolina. He saved a lot of lives.
And California after the wildfires?
California, but I mean in North Carolina where they were really in trouble. They had no communication. People were dying. They were dying of starvation. He saved a lot of lives in North Carolina.
Okay. Now you're going to rescue astronauts. And now, and again, you do all of this. I would think liberals would love the fact that you have the biggest electric vehicle company in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be adored by the left, you know.
Yeah, not anymore.
Less so these days.
He killed that, huh?
I mean, less so.
I really didn't know.
Well, I mean, this whole sort of like, you know, they call it like Trump derangement syndrome. Yeah. And you don't realize how real this is until like you can't reason with people. So like I was at a friend's birthday party in LA, just a birthday dinner, and it was like a nice, quiet dinner, and everyone was behaving normally. And I happened to mention, this is before the election, like a month or two before, I happened to mention the president's name. And it was like they got shot with a dart in the jugular that contained like methamphetamine and rabies, okay? And they're like, wow! And I'm like, what is wrong? Guys, like, you can't have like a normal conversation. Yeah. And it's like they become completely irrational.
He has no idea, but if you're friends with him, you pay a price. You know, it's like I walk in a restaurant in New York and it's like half the room it's daggers and they want to.
No, the eye daggers level is insane. Yeah. I mean, there was like I had like some invitation because I got invited to like basically a big sort of damn event like that was, but I received the invitation like the beginning of last year, and I still attended even after I'd endorsed President Trump, and I didn't realize how profoundly that would affect how I was received. I mean, I walk into the room and I'm getting just the dirty looks from everyone. Like, if looks could kill, I would have been dead several times over.
But that was not before Trump. BC,
ashes on the floor.
Before Trump, that never happened, right?
No.
I want to thank some of the great people from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. They're here to take photographs, and it's my honor to do so. Also, the fire department, the great firefighters. So they're here throughout the room, and I want to thank you very much for being here. I'll be with you in a little while. We'll do some great photos. We have plenty of time. Policemen, policewomen, and firemen, firewomen, they're here, and we appreciate it very much. You've done a fantastic job. I think it's very important to state that incredible things are happening in our country. I think we've made more progress in 3 weeks than they've made in 4 years, especially with respect to the reputation of our country. And people are respecting us again as a country and as a powerful country, and maybe a smart country, but maybe not so smart, because when you look at some of the waste, fraud, and abuse that's being uncovered by DOJ and the people at DOJ, these are young, often young, but super brilliant people, incredible computer scientists and other things, and they're finding levels of fraud and waste and abuse like I think nobody ever thought possible. But before we do that, I just want to ask Will to come over. I've just finished signing some executive orders, and if we could start with that, Will, you might want to come up here and just explain what we did. Thank you.
Good afternoon, y'all. A short while ago, President Trump signed three items. The first is an executive order relating to the affordability and availability of in vitro fertilization and other fertility treatments. These are treatments that have become unaffordable for many Americans, or have been unaffordable for many Americans. And the executive order is a directive to the Domestic Policy Council to examine ways to make IVF and other fertility treatments more affordable for more Americans. The second item that we signed was a presidential memorandum imposing radical transparency requirements on government departments and agencies, in keeping with President Trump and the administration's broader commitment to governmental transparency. What this presidential memorandum would do is require, as waste, fraud, and abuse is uncovered, as programs are canceled, and ultimately as taxpayer dollars are saved, this presidential memorandum would require departments and agencies to make all of the details of that freely available to the public. Lastly, we have another executive order that President Trump signed relating to independent agencies. This executive order would establish important oversight functions in the Office of Management and Budget and its subsidiary office, OIRA, supervising independent agencies and many of their actions, and also reestablishes the longstanding norm that only the President or the Attorney General can speak for the United States when stating an opinion as to what the law is.
Thank you very much, Will. That was the primary purpose of this conference, to explain that they're all very important in their own way. Fertilization, I've been saying that we're going to do what we have to do, and I think the women and families, husbands, are very appreciative of it. But that was it. I do want to say while I'm up here, I've been contacted by some of the biggest companies in the world, and because of what we're doing economically and through tariffs and taxes and incentives, they want to come back into the United States. And we'll be announcing various very large companies, the biggest actually, and they'll be coming back, having to do with chips and having to do also with cars and lots of other things. We're going to be announcing some very, very big, momentous decisions are being made by companies all around the world, the biggest, and they want to come back into the U.S. Car plants are being canceled in other locations now because they want to build them here. And you read about a couple, not that I want to mention names or anything, but you read about a couple of big ones in Mexico just got canceled because they're going to be building them in the United States. And that's very simply because of what we're doing with respect to taxes, tariffs, and incentives. And I think it's a very important thing. And you'll be seeing this over the next probably over the next 2 years, to be honest, but you're going to see a lot of it over the next couple of weeks. A lot of big ones are going to be announcing. And so while we're here, I guess we can take a couple of quick questions. Go ahead, please. Please.
Mr. President, have you decided specifically what the auto tariff rate should be?
Yeah, I probably will tell you that on April 2nd, but it'll be in the neighborhood of 25%.
And pharmaceuticals?
It'll be 25% and higher, and it'll go very substantially higher over a course of a year. But we want to give them time to come in because, as you know, when they come into the United States and they have their plant or factory here, there is no tariff. So we want to give them a little bit of a chance. Yes, thank you.
The EU, I'm sorry, Andrea Shalal, the EU representative is going to be here in Washington next week. I'm sorry, tomorrow. He's going to be meeting with Hassett and Greer and Letnick. What can the EU do to sort of avoid the reciprocal tariffs that you've talked about? And, you know, you've talked a lot about the VAT. Do you expect them to reduce that?
Well, they did already, as I understand it, reduce their car tariff all the way down to what we have. And a lot of that will take place, and I think some won't do it and some will do it. But the EU had a 10% tax on cars, and now they have a 2.5% tax, which is the exact same as us. So already we've saved a tremendous amount. That would be great. If everybody would do that, then we'd all be on the same playing field. Because essentially what we're doing with the tariffs is, you know, they charge us, we charge them, same amount. And it's called reciprocal, actually. And whatever they charge us, we're charging them. And so the EU is, you know, I appreciate that they did this, but, you know, the EU has been very unfair to us. We have a deficit of $350 billion. They don't take our cars. They don't take our farm products. They don't take almost anything. They take very little. and we're going to have to straighten that out, and we will. I have no doubt about it. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Could you tell us a little bit more about the Russia talks, your impression of how they went today, and if you're perhaps more confident or less confident of a deal after what happened today?
Well, much more confident. They were very good. Russia wants to do something. They want to stop the savage barbarianism. I mean, what's going on over there? It's soldiers are being killed by the thousands on a weekly basis. It's ridiculous. And they're not American soldiers. They're Russian soldiers, and they're Ukrainian soldiers largely, although a lot of Koreans have been killed, as you know. Quite a bit of them have been killed. They came over to fight, and a large portion have been wiped out. But we want to end it. It's a senseless war. It should have never happened, would have never happened if I was president, and it's a shame to see it. And I see pictures that you don't see, but I see pictures of fields that look just horrible. It looks like Gettysburg. If you see the old pictures of Gettysburg, it's soldiers lying all over the field, body parts all over the field. They're all dead. And this is going on a daily basis. It's a horrible thing. Both Russia and Ukraine, they're losing thousands and thousands of soldiers, and a lot of people have been killed too. I think that's one of the things that you'll see historically, and you'll see later on as it goes along. I think people are going to be surprised at how many people, not only soldiers, have been killed in Ukraine. A lot more people than you think. Yeah, please.
President Trump, as part of a peace deal with Putin, would you be willing to consider removing all American troops from Europe?
Well, nobody's asked me to do that, so I don't think we'd have to do that. I wouldn't want to do that. But that question's never really come up. Yeah. Please.
Sir, do you support stationing European peacekeeping troops in Ukraine as part of this peace deal?
If they want to do that, that's great. I'm all for it. If they want to do that, I think that'd be fine.
Even if the Russians are
I mean, I know France has mentioned it. Others have mentioned it. UK has mentioned it. But yeah, if we have a peace deal, I think having troops over there from the standpoint of Europe, we won't have to put any over there because, we're very far away. But having troops over there would be fine. I would not object to it at all. We're talking about this now, peace. We have either a ceasefire or a peace itself, and we're looking to do both. We'd start off with the ceasefire, and if they want to do that. I know France was willing to do that, and I thought that was a beautiful gesture. Yeah, please.
Do you have any message for Ukrainians who, after 3 years of fighting, might feel betrayed or disappointed at not having a seat at these initial talks in Saudi Arabia?
Well, I think I'm really disappointed in what's happened. I've been watching this for 3 years. It's a war that would have never happened if I was president, and I've been watching these people being killed at levels that you've rarely seen, not even close, since the Second World War. And I'm very disappointed. I hear that, they're upset about not having a seat. Well, they've had a seat for 3 years and a long time before that. This could have been settled very easily. Just a half-baked negotiator could have settled this years ago without the loss of much land, very little land, without the loss of any lives, and without the loss of cities that are just laying on their sides. You have those magnificent golden domes that are shattered, will never be replaced. You can't replace them. 1,000-year-old domes that are so beautiful, you can't replace that. A whole civilization has changed because of what. So when they're worried about not being seated, you mean somebody that should have gone in and made a deal a long time ago. You could have made a deal. This is one that could have made a deal. There was no talk of this during the Trump administration. Putin would have never, ever done it. And by the way, we wouldn't have had October 7th, you know that. We wouldn't have had October 7th either in Israel, and we wouldn't have had that mess that's going on over there. It's like we have great fire people here. We're putting out fires. All over the world we're putting out fires. So that wouldn't have happened. And you know what else wouldn't have happened? Inflation. Because it was caused really by the cost of energy going through the roof because of their bad energy policies and also their spending, their terrible spending, wasteful spending on the Green New Scam. It's a scam. It's a whole big scam. Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. I want to ask you a little closer to home. What would it take for you to reconsider the restrictions on the Associated Press? And secondly, some of your advisors are concerned with the Associated Press's style guide, using language and giving guidance to not use words like illegal immigrant or to use phrases like gender-affirming care. And they're concerned about that being an encroaching amount of liberalism in the way in which the press writes about things. Do you share those concerns?
Well, I do think that some of the phrases that they want to use are ridiculous, and I think, frankly, they become obsolete, especially in the last 3 weeks, because many things have happened in the last 3 weeks. And I didn't know about that, but I would say that if they want to use certain phrases like that, and I guess some are okay, but many aren't, but the Associated Press just refuses to go with what the law is and what is taking place. It's called the Gulf of America now. It's not called the Gulf of Mexico any longer. I have the right to do it, just like we have the right to do Mount McKinley, and nobody's even challenging that. But only the essentially, it's primarily the Associated Press, and I don't know what they're doing, but I just say that we're going to keep them out until such time as they agree that it's the Gulf of America. We're very proud of this country, and we want it to be the Gulf of America. Now, the Associated Press, as you know, has been very, very wrong on the election, on Trump and the treatment of Trump and other things having to do with Trump and Republicans and conservatives. And they're doing us no favors, and I guess I'm not doing them any favors. That's the way life works. But, you know, thank you for the question. Who are you with? Very good question. Thank you. Yes.
We're hearing that Russia wants to force Ukraine to hold new elections in order to sign any kind of a peace deal. Is that something that the U.S. would ever support?
Well, we have a situation where we haven't had elections in Ukraine, where we have martial law, or essentially martial law in Ukraine, where the leader in Ukraine, I mean, I hate to say it, but he's down at 4% approval rating, and where a country has been blown to smithereens. You got most of the cities are laying on their sides. The buildings are collapsed. It looks like a massive demolition site. The whole, I mean, so many of the cities. I mean, they haven't done it in Kiev because I guess they don't want to shoot too many rockets in there. They've done it 20%, but they haven't done it 100%. If they wanted to do it 100%, it would probably happen very quickly. But you have cities that are absolutely decimated. And yeah, I would say that, you know, when they want a seat at the table, you could say the people have to, wouldn't the people of Ukraine have to say, like, you know, it's been a long time since we've had an election. That's not a Russia thing. That's something coming from me and coming from many other countries also. You know, Ukraine is being just wiped out. Look at what's happening to the cities. There are cities, there's not even a building standing. It's a massive, you talk about Gaza. I mean, it's literally, these cities look like Gaza. Actually, many have, percentage-wise, more buildings knocked down than in Gaza. So, you know, people are tired of it. People want to see something happen. And, you know, the other thing that it's been bothering me for a long time, because I solved the problem with NATO. They paid hundreds of billions of dollars into the funds of NATO when I said you got to pay, because the United States was paying for European countries, and then they take advantage of us on trade. But I've seen it. Look, they have to pay. They have to find out, where's the money going to? We have, I believe President Zelensky said last week that he doesn't know where half of the money is that we gave him. Well, we gave them, I believe, $350 billion, but let's say it's something less than that, but it's a lot. And we have to equalize with Europe, because Europe has given us given a very much smaller percentage than that. I think Europe has given $100 billion, and we've given, let's say, 300 plus, and it's more important for them than it is for us. We have an ocean in between, and they don't. But where is all the money that's been given? Where is it going? And nobody, I've never seen an accounting of it. We give hundreds of billions of dollars. I don't see any accounting. So I want to see peace. Look, you know why I want? Because I don't want all these people killed anymore. I'm looking at people that are being killed, and they're Russian and Ukrainian people, but they're people. Doesn't matter where they're from on the whole planet. And I think I have the power to end this war. And I think it's going very well. But today I heard, oh, well, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal. I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land Everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed, and no city would have been demolished, and not one dome would have been knocked down. But they chose not to do it that way. And President Biden, in all fairness, he doesn't have a clue. What he was so bad for this. He was so bad, so pathetic, so sad. But with all of that being said, look, it is what it is. When I left, there was no chance that this could have happened, but it happened because we had incompetent leadership at many different levels. But when you see what's taken place in Ukraine with millions of people killed, including the soldiers, millions of people killed, a big percentage of their cities knocked down to the ground. I don't know how anybody even lives there. You know, when they say they took a poll and Zelensky's at 4%, who's living there? You know, I mean, it's hard to believe that people live there. Their cities are being knocked down, and this is something that would have never happened. And by the way, for 4 years, it didn't happen. It was never going to happen. Go ahead.
One follow-up question. How would you counter the perception, because Russia's pushing for this, obviously, they don't really hold true elections, that would be a capitulation of some sort. How would you guard against potentially Russia installing a puppet government? And then finally, how would that new election have an impact on getting Zelensky to sign the rare earth minerals deal?
Look, you have leadership, and I like him personally. He's fine. But I don't care about personally. I care about getting the job done. You have leadership now that's allowed a war to go on that should have never even happened, even without the United States. Look, we had a president who was grossly incompetent. He had no idea what he was doing. He said some very stupid things, like going in for portions and all of the things. He made a lot of bad statements, but he's grossly incompetent, and I think everyone knew that. This is something that should have never happened, would have never happened. And I used to discuss it with Putin. President Putin and I would talk about Ukraine, and it was the apple of his eye, I will tell you that. But there was never a chance of him going in. And I told him, you better not go in, don't go in, don't go in. And he understood that. He understood it fully. But I'm only interested, I want to see if I can save maybe millions of lives. This could even end up in a World War III. I mean, to be honest with you, you've been hearing now Europe is saying, well, I think we're going to go in and we're going to go. All of a sudden, you're going to end up in World War III over something that should have never happened. And, you know, it's a very sad situation. Yeah, please.
In a court filing, the White House said that Elon Musk is not a DOJ employee and has no authority to make decisions. Can you clarify for us today
well, Elon
what his
Musk,
exact role is there?
Yeah. Elon is, to me, a patriot. So, you know, you could call him an employee, you could call him a consultant, you could call him whatever you want. But he's a patriot. I mean, look at the kind of things. I just said, just write it down, just in case that question got asked, right? And which I'm surprised it took so long, actually. But you know what? Ukraine's a bigger deal because people are dying by the thousands a week, thousands. But look at this, from 90 to 99, Social Security, 6,054,000 people. Well, that's okay, maybe that's possible. You know, 90 to 99, maybe it's possible. It's a lot of people, though, at that. But people that live to 100 to 109, 4,734,000. Wow, that's a lot. That means over 100 years old. They're 4 million people. I don't know too many. I know people that are doing great in their 90s, but not too many people over 100. But over 120, from 120 years old, people that are 120 years old up to 129. 3,472,000 people. Wow. You know, that can't possibly be because the record is like, I think it's one person, a woman, lived to 127, but they have 3,472. Okay, but now we're going really in. People from 130 years old to 139-year-old. 3,936,000. Wow. I wonder if people are getting paid with all this. I mean, are these checks? And that's what we're checking right now. People from 140 years old to 149 years old, 3,542,000, 140 years old and beyond. Now we're really going because we're looking to break the record by 25 years. People from 150 years old to 159 years old, 1,345,000. These are in the, by the way, these are in the computer files. This is what they do well. They're super. I asked Elon, who are these Doge people? He said they're super brilliant computer people and they love the country. It's simple. Wait a minute. People from 160 years old to 169 years, 121,000. So 160-year-old people. 170 to 179,000, 6,087. But now, let's go into the real numbers. From 200 to 209 years old, 879 people. From 210 years old, I haven't met any of them. And if I did, I would bless them. I would worship the ground they walk on. 210 to 219 years, 866. From 220 years old to 229 years old, 1,039. And then you have two people. From 240 years old to 249 years old, one person. And there's one person that's 360 years old. That's just that. And then, where's the money being spent, right? Let's go into that for just a second. $520 million for a consultant on the environment. It's called Environmental, Social, and Governance. Investments in Africa and mobilize private sector resources. $520 million. Somebody got $520 million for an environmental, sounds like an environmental study. I've always been one that paid a lot of money for my environmental studies, but I paid like $50,000, not $520 million. $520 million for ESG. $25 million to promote biodiversity, conservation, and promote licit livelihoods by developing socially responsible behavior in the country of Colombia. Well, it's nice, $25 million to go into Colombia for something that nobody ever heard of. $40 million to improve the social and economic inclusion of sedentary migrants. $40 million. $42 million for Johns Hopkins, great place, to research and drive social and behavior change in Uganda. $42 million. What about us? What about social change in our country? $70 million for a center at Purdue to research university-sourced, evidence-based solutions to developmental challenges. I mean, these are massive numbers on things that nobody ever heard about. $10 million for Mozambique voluntary medical male circumcisions. $10 million for circumcisions in another country. $9.7 million for UC Berkeley to develop a cohort of Cambodian youth with enterprise-driven skills. In other words, let's teach them something about enterprise. What about our people? Can't we teach them about enterprise? $2.3 million for strengthening independent voices in Cambodia. $32 million to the Prague Civil Society Center, which is a very liberal group of people. Wonder how much of that money came back to the people that approved it. $14 million for improving public procurement in Serbia. $486 million to the Consortium for Elections and Political Process Strengthening, including $22 million for inclusive and participatory political process in Moldova, and $21 million for voter turnout in India. Well, why are we giving $21 million to India? They got a lot of money. They're one of the highest taxing countries in the world in terms of us. We can hardly get in there because their tariffs are so high. I have a lot of respect for India. I have a lot of respect for the Prime Minister. He just left, as you know, 2 days ago. But we're giving $21 million for voter turnout. It's voter turnout in India. What about like voter turnout here? Oh, we've done that, I guess. We did $500 million, didn't we? It's called the lockboxes. $20 million for fiscal federalism in Nepal. Listen to these numbers. This is all fraud. $19 million for biodiversity conservation in Nepal. $1.5 million for voter confidence. We want to give them confidence in Liberia. $14 million for social cohesion in Mali. $2.5 million for inclusive democracies in South Africa. $47 million for improving learning outcomes in Asia. Asia's doing very well. They're doing a lot better than we do in the schools, aren't they? $2 million to develop sustainable recycling models to increase socioeconomic cohesion among marginalized communities in Kosovo and Eshkali and in Egypt. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. I could, by the way, I could read this all day long. I could go on all day long, and you'll see hundreds of billions of dollars, and we're doing it. But when I saw the Social Security numbers, I said, wow, that's really something. So we have, let's just go above 100 years old. We have millions and millions of people over 100 years old. Everybody knows that's not so. We have a very corrupt country, and it's a sad thing to say, but we're figuring it out. Now, the good thing about Social Security and what I read is if you take all of those numbers off, because they're obviously fraudulent or incompetent, but if you take all of those millions of people off Social Security, all of a sudden we have a very powerful Social Security with people that are 80 and 70 and 90, but not 200 years old. You know, so it's a very positive thing. How about over here? Yeah, please.
Your reaction to Michelle King, the head resigning after the Doge?
Who resigned?
The head of Social Security.
I don't know. I mean, I resigned or got fired. I think got fired. You know, when you fire somebody, they always resign, and then they say, we resigned. But when you have numbers like that, I think really it's got fired. They have to get fired. Who would keep them? How could you have numbers like this? Now, the big thing is, how many of these people got paid? Were they getting paid? Were they getting paid? How many of them were getting paid Social Security? Because if that's the case, it's a massive fraud. We'll have to call those great Palm Beach police into this situation, right? You guys would figure that out very quickly. But how many of them are being paid? I mean, maybe millions of them, but it's a total fraud. Also, a lot of illegal immigrants are in Social Security that shouldn't be there. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Mr. President, there was a big wave of probationary federal workers who were fired over the weekend. Some of these workers focused on nuclear weapon security were immediately rehired. Do you have any concerns about how these terminations have
No,
played out?
not at all. I think we have to just do what we have to do. It's, you know, you're gonna. It's amazing what's been found right now. It's amazing. If we feel that in some cases they'll fire people and then they'll put some people back, not all of them, because a lot of people were let go. Don't forget, I got elected on the basis of making our government stronger and smaller, because we have millions of people that obviously they're paying millions of people that shouldn't be paid, and that has also to do with workers. Yeah, please. No, go ahead. Axios, New York Times.
Sorry. Mr. President, given your concerns about corruption, you said that if there were any conflicts of interest with Elon Musk, you wouldn't let him anywhere near it.
That's right.
Doge and SpaceX employees are now working directly at the Federal Aviation Administration and the Defense Department, agencies that have billions of dollars in contracts with Musk's companies or that directly regulate his companies. How is that not a conflict of interest?
Well, I mean, I'm just hearing about it, and if there is, and he told me before I told him, but obviously I will not let there be any conflict of interest. He's done an amazing job. They've revealed, in fact, he's going to be on tonight, a big show called Sean Hannity at 9 o'clock, and he's on and I'm on, and we talk about a lot of different things. And any conflicts, I told Elon, any conflicts, you can't have anything to do with that. So anything to do with possibly even space, we won't let Elon partake in that. Yeah, please.
On immigration, sir, you said you would be sending the worst of the worst to Guantanamo Bay. What we're finding out is that there are a lot of low-risk migrants who don't have a criminal background who are also being sent. Are you thinking about this differently now?
No, they're going to be brought back to their countries. And with some persuasion, every one of those countries, everyone in the, as you know, every country is taking the people back. So some of them are going to be brought back to, many of them, any of them that are low risk, as you say, are going to be brought back to their countries. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Can you give us a bit of an update on where you stand with Venezuela? It's oil. There's basically a monthly license that can soon extend.
Well, you know, we had Venezuela on the run, and it looked like that was going to be very good. And when Biden came in, as he always does, he screws it up. And they started buying millions and millions and millions of dollars of oil, billions of dollars actually, of oil, and it gave them a new life, a new really lease on life. But we'll see. We had some pretty good discussions with a lot of people within our government, in the United States government, that are involved in that. And Venezuela's a little bit early, but we were not buying from Venezuela when Biden came in for whatever reason. Instead of just taking the beautiful, as I call it, liquid gold, we have more than anybody. They started paying a fortune to Venezuela, and we're looking at that actually. Why did they do that? Why were they doing that? Why would they go to the enemy and give them billions and billions of dollars? Now, with that being said, as you know, Venezuela has said very strongly they will not take any illegal immigrant, any of the people that they sent over to us. They sent their gangs, probably the worst gang anywhere in the world, as bad as MS-13, maybe worse, and they came out of the jails of Venezuela. They emptied their jails into our country, and they said, we'll never take them back. Well, they took them back, and they're taking them back, and they are taking them back rapidly. They were sending a lot of people to Venezuela. They said they wouldn't take them back, and they are taking back. But we're looking at Venezuela very seriously, and we're going to be able to. Don't forget, I've only been here for 3 weeks. Yeah, please.
Just a little clarity on, are you inclined to continue to allow Venezuela, through, I think, Chevron and other oil companies, to export those petroleum products, or are you
maybe
inclined
not
to pull back?
Yeah, maybe not. We're looking at that now. I just got here. When I left, they weren't doing anything. They were ready to go. We give up. And then Biden came along and he gave them literally billions of dollars. I couldn't believe it, actually. And we have so much under our feet, liquid gold. We have so much, and it was pretty amazing. So we're looking at that whole situation, why he did it. All right, how about one more? Yeah, please.
Mr. President, what can you tell us about the CIA drone flights over Mexico? Is this the next step in the war against the cartels?
Well, we're going to see.
Should they have authority to take lethal action?
Mexico's allowed a tremendous number of people to go through their country into ours, and even people coming from Mexico, and illegals, totally illegal. They've allowed people to empty jails into Mexico and then let them come through with this totally ridiculous open border policy of the Biden administration. So millions of people have come in, and hundreds of thousands, and actually millions, are criminals. They came in from jails all over the world that release them into Mexico, and they come into our country. And they also came in from Canada, by the way, large numbers through Canada. In fact, when we closed up the one border, they came in through the other border. So Canada is not an uninterested party. But I will say this, we're dealing with Mexico. I have a very good relationship with Mexico, but I think Mexico is largely run by the cartels, and that's a sad thing to say. And if they wanted help with that, we'd give them help. But Mexico, if you look at what's gone on with Mexico for years now, but now especially, it's run by the cartels. And they've allowed millions of people to come into our country from jails and prisons of other countries from all over the world, not just South America, Africa, Asia, all over. A lot from the Congo in Africa, a lot. They opened their jails. They came in through Mexico, and we have some of the worst criminals coming in from the Congo and other places. So it's not just South America, and it's not just Venezuela, but they opened their jails. And you know, the crime rates in Venezuela and other places all over the world has gone way down. You know why? Because they've given us their prisoners, they've given us their drug lords and their gang members, and it's hard to believe that we accepted this. It's hard to believe that we allowed open borders, and we're taking in, hundreds of thousands and millions of people coming in from all over the world that are absolute stone-cold criminals. In fact, 11,088 murderers, and many of those people have murdered more than one person. Why are they giving us these people, and why are we taking these people under Biden? You had a border czar that never went to the border. Happened to be a vice president, never went to the border, never called the border people. I call them all the time. I speak to them all the time. But here's the good news. We have the most secure border we've ever had right now. As secure and even more secure than I had it 4 years ago. And the Border Patrol is doing incredible. ICE is doing incredible. Tom Homan's unbelievable, and Kristi Noem has been just working very, very hard, very, very hard. And we have the best numbers we've ever had, and we're going to keep it that way. And we're going to find out how a thing like this could have happened to our country, because who would allow this to happen? What they've done to our country is so sad. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, President. Before the end of the month.
Of the United States, Mr. J.D. Vance, who was here last year as senator, and we are very happy that he has come back to Munich, and we are very much looking forward to his speech. Please welcome Vice President J.D. Vance.
Well, thank you, and thanks to all the gathered delegates and luminaries and media professionals, and thanks especially to the host of the Munich Security Conference for being able to put on such an incredible event. We're, of course, thrilled to be here. We're happy to be here. And, you know, one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is, of course, our shared values. And, you know, it's great to be back in Germany. As you heard earlier, I was here last year as United States Senator. I saw Foreign Secretary David Lammy, and joked that both of us last year had different jobs than we have now. But now it's time for all of our countries, for all of us who have been fortunate enough to be given political power by our respective peoples, to use it wisely to improve their lives. And I want to say that, you know, I was fortunate in my time here to spend some time outside the walls of this conference over the last 24 hours. And I've been so impressed by the hospitality of the people, even of course, as they're reeling from yesterday's horrendous attack. And the first time I was ever in Munich was with my wife, actually, who's here with me today, on a personal trip. And I've always loved the city of Munich, and I've always loved its people. And I just want to say that we're very moved, and our thoughts and prayers are with Munich and everybody affected by the evil inflicted on this beautiful community. We're thinking about you, we're praying for you, and we will certainly be rooting for you in the days and weeks to come. Now, thank you. I hope that's not the last bit of applause that I get, but we gather at this conference, of course, to discuss security, and normally we mean threats to our external security. I see many great military leaders gathered here today. But while the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense, the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. Now, I was struck that a former European commissioner went on television recently and sounded delighted that the Romanian government had just annulled an entire election. He warned that if things don't go to plan, the very same thing could happen in Germany too. Now, these cavalier statements are shocking to American ears. For years, we've been told that everything we fund and support is in the name of our shared democratic values. Everything from our Ukraine policy to digital censorship is billed as a defense of democracy. But when we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we ought to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard. And I say ourselves because I fundamentally believe that we are on the same team. We must do more than talk about democratic values, we must live them. Now, within living memory of many of you in this room, the Cold War positioned defenders of democracy against much more tyrannical forces on this continent. And consider the side in that fight that censored dissidents, that closed churches, that canceled elections. Were they the good guys? Certainly not. And thank God they lost the Cold War. They lost because they neither valued nor respected all of the extraordinary blessings of liberty. The freedom to surprise, to make mistakes, to invent, to build. As it turns out, you can't mandate innovation or creativity, just as you can't force people what to think, what to feel, or what to believe. And we believe those things are certainly connected. And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action. I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief. And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizens suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. And in the interest of comedy, my friends, but also in the interest of truth, I will admit that sometimes the loudest voices for censorship have come not from within Europe, but from within my own country, where the prior administration threatened and bullied social media companies to censor so-called misinformation. Misinformation like, for example, the idea that coronavirus had likely leaked from a laboratory in China. Our own government encouraged private companies to silence people who dared to utter what turned out to be an obvious truth. So I come here today not just with an observation, but with an offer. And just as the Biden administration seemed desperate to silence people for speaking their minds, so the Trump administration will do precisely the opposite, and I hope that we can work together on that. In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town, and under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree. Now, we're at the point, of course, that the situation has gotten so bad that this December, Romania straight up canceled the results of a presidential election based on the flimsy suspicions of an intelligence agency and enormous pressure from its continental neighbors. Now, as I understand it, the argument was that Russian disinformation had infected the Romanian elections. But I'd ask my European friends to have some perspective. You can believe it's wrong for Russia to buy social media advertisements to influence your elections. We certainly do. You can condemn it on the world stage even. But if your democracy can be destroyed with a few $100,000 of digital advertising from a foreign country, then it wasn't very strong to begin with. Now, the good news is that I happen to think your democracies are substantially less brittle than many people apparently fear. And I really do believe that allowing our citizens to speak their mind will make them stronger still. Which, of course, brings us back to Munich, where the organizers of this very conference have banned lawmakers representing populist parties on both the left and the right from participating in these conversations. Now, again, we don't have to agree with everything or anything that people say. But when people represent, when political leaders represent an important constituency, it is incumbent upon us to at least participate in dialogue with them. Now, to many of us on the other side of the Atlantic, it looks more and more like old entrenched interests hiding behind ugly Soviet-era words like misinformation and disinformation, who simply don't like the idea that somebody with an alternative viewpoint might express a different opinion or, God forbid, vote a different way or, even worse, win an election. Now, this is a security conference, and I'm sure you all came here prepared to talk about how exactly you intend to increase defense spending over the next few years in line with some new target. And that's great, because as President Trump has made abundantly clear, he believes that our European friends must play a bigger role in the future of this continent. We don't think, you hear this term, burden sharing, but we think it's an important part of being in a shared alliance together that the Europeans step up while America focuses on areas of the world that are in great danger. But let me also ask you, how will you even begin to think through the kinds of budgeting questions if we don't know what it is that we are defending in the first place? I've heard a lot already in my conversations, and I've had many, many great conversations with many people gathered here in this room. I've heard a lot about what you need to defend yourselves from, and of course that's important. But what has seemed a little bit less clear to me, and certainly I think to many of the citizens of Europe, is what exactly it is that you're defending yourselves for. What is the positive vision that animates this shared security compact that we all believe is so important? And I believe deeply that there is no security if you are afraid of the voices, the opinions, and the conscience that guide your very own people. Europe faces many challenges, but the crisis this continent faces right now, the crisis I believe we all face together, is one of our own making. If you're running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you. Nor, for that matter, is there anything that you can do for the American people who elected me and elected President Trump. You need democratic mandates to accomplish anything of value in the coming years. Have we learned nothing that thin mandates produce unstable results? But there is so much of value that can be accomplished with the kind of democratic mandate that I think will come from being more responsive to the voices of your citizens. If you're going to enjoy competitive economies, if you're going to enjoy affordable energy and secure supply chains, then you need mandates to govern, because you have to make difficult choices to enjoy all of these things. And of course, we know that very well in America. You cannot win a democratic mandate by censoring your opponents or putting them in jail, whether that's the leader of the opposition, a humble Christian praying in her own home, or a journalist trying to report the news. Nor can you win one by disregarding your basic electorate on questions like who gets to be a part of our shared society. And of all the pressing challenges that the nations represented here face, I believe there is nothing more urgent than mass migration. Today, almost 1 in 5 people living in this country moved here from abroad. That is, of course, an all-time high. It's a similar number, by the way, in the United States, also an all-time high. The number of immigrants who entered the EU from non-EU countries doubled between 2021 and 2022 alone, and of course it's gotten much higher since. And we know this situation, it didn't materialize in a vacuum. It's the result of a series of conscious decisions made by politicians all over the continent and others across the world over the span of a decade. We saw the horrors wrought by these decisions yesterday in this very city. And of course, I can't bring it up again without thinking about the terrible victims who had a beautiful winter day in Munich ruined. Our thoughts and prayers are with them and will remain with them. But why did this happen in the first place? It's a terrible story, but it's one we've heard way too many times in Europe and unfortunately too many times in the United States as well. An asylum seeker, often a young man in his mid-20s, already known to police, rams a car into a crowd and shatters a community. How many times must we suffer these appalling setbacks before we change course and take our shared civilization in a new direction? No voter on this continent went to the ballot box to open the floodgates to millions of unvetted immigrants. But you know what they did vote for? In England, they voted for Brexit, and agree or disagree, they voted for it. And more all over Europe, they're voting for political leaders who promise to put an end to out-of-control migration. Now, I happen to agree with a lot of these concerns, but you don't have to agree with me. I just think that people care about their homes, they care about their dreams, they care about their safety and their capacity to provide for themselves and their children. And they're smart. I think this is one of the most important things I've learned in my brief time in politics. Contrary to what you might hear a couple mountains over in Davos, the citizens of all of our nations don't generally think of themselves as educated animals or as interchangeable cogs of a global economy. And it's hardly surprising that they don't want to be shuffled about or relentlessly ignored by their leaders. And it is the business of democracy to adjudicate these big questions at the ballot box. I believe that dismissing people, dismissing their concerns, or worse yet, shutting down media, shutting down elections, or shutting people out of the political process protects nothing. In fact, it is the most surefire way to destroy democracy. And speaking up and expressing opinions isn't election interference. Even when people express views outside your own country, and even when those people are very influential. And trust me, I say this with all humor, if American democracy can survive 10 years of Greta Thunberg scolding, you guys can survive a few months of Elon Musk. But what no democracy, American, German, or European, will survive is telling millions of voters that their thoughts and concerns, their aspirations, their pleas for relief are invalid or unworthy of even being considered. Democracy rests on the sacred principle that the voice of the people matters. There's no room for firewalls. You either uphold the principle or you don't. Europeans, the people, have a voice. European leaders have a choice. And my strong belief is that we do not need to be afraid of the future. You can embrace what your people tell you, even when it's surprising, even when you don't agree. And if you do so, you can face the future with certainty and with confidence, knowing that the nation stands behind each of you. And that, to me, is the great magic of democracy. It's not in these stone buildings or beautiful hotels. It's not even in the great institutions that we have built together as a shared society. To believe in democracy is to understand that each of our citizens has wisdom and has a voice. And if we refuse to listen to that voice, even our most successful fights will secure very little. As Pope John Paul II, in my view, one of the most extraordinary champions of democracy on this continent or any other, once said, "Do not be afraid." We shouldn't be afraid of our people, even when they express views that disagree with their leadership. Thank you all. Good luck to all of you. God bless you.
And then
I haven't heard that. I mean, Roger's a very good friend of mine, and Peter's obviously, he's been doing a great job.
Did you know
I haven't heard.
Thursday?
Let me look at. You tell me something. I have not heard
the
about.
question I had is, were you aware of what Secretary Hegseth was going to say in his speech at NATO?
Generally speaking, yeah. Generally speaking, I was. So I'll speak to Roger. I'll speak to Pete. I'll find out.
Mr. President, the Energy Dominance Council, that's for all forms of energy? Does that include
All
wind and
forms of
solar?
energy. Yep.
And the pipeline you mentioned, sir, is that Constitution Pipeline in New York?
Yes.
Can you, is that the
I
project?
believe
that's
so,
finished?
right? Yeah, that's what it is. And, you know, they've been trying to get it for 20 years. And what it means is for New York, upstate New York, and even everywhere in New York, also other states, but in particular New England, that New England will now, I think, will cut the energy prices, and big cuts in New York too, but cut the energy prices literally in half. We have the permits. We have permits that just about everything we need a New York permit, and I would imagine they want to do because their energy prices will come down so far. And it's a lot of jobs for New York. It's a great thing for New York. Everybody wants it. We'll be meeting with the various governors, Governor of New York, and the other governors too. And we can have it built in about 9 months, and let's say 1 year, but we can actually have it built in pretty close to 9 months. It's all set. We have most of the permits, almost all of the permits.
And on just, you're prioritizing energy dominance today. You've also prioritized trade balance. The oil industry is a little worried about the steel tariffs. I mean, they put 20,000 feet steel in the ground at a well. How will you balance that? Is there a possibility?
You're talking about steel and aluminum.
Indeed, steel tariffs.
So the steel, I saved the steel industry in my first term by putting on tariffs because China was dumping massive amounts of steel. Others also, but mostly China. And I put very substantial, we took in $600 billion worth of tariffs from China. No other president's taken up, literally haven't gotten 10 cents from China, not 10 cents. And hundreds of billions of dollars came in from China. And they understood it. They understood what I did. But the dumping stopped. And had I not done that, you wouldn't have one steel mill, I think I can say, not one steel mill operating in this country. And we need steel. We need steel. I mean, there are some things you have to have, and steel is one of them for military, et cetera. So I think steel is going to be very strong. It's going to be very strong. I think it'll go back to being really powerful. We saved it. I mean, we were talking about U.S. Steel last week. U.S. Steel would have been closed, totally closed. We saved it. And now it's going to become, I think, very, very profitable. The tariffs are going to save a lot of industries.
Mr. President, U.S. Steel, can I just follow up on U.S. Steel just
go
very
ahead,
quickly,
finish
sir? If the Japanese company that's interested in U.S. Steel wants to take a minority stake as opposed to full ownership, is
A
that
minority
fine?
stake I wouldn't mind greatly, but what they're doing right now is they're going to be investors, and they're going to be investing in, I think, debt and various other things. But we didn't want to let U.S. Steel go to a foreign company. U.S. Steel was the greatest company in the world for a period of 15 years. It was, you know, it was the big deal 80 years ago or so. And psychologically, we can't even think about letting that happen. But what is going to happen, and we've already seen it, you see it in the stock price, with the tariffs, U.S. Steel is going to be a real powerhouse again.
Mr. President, if I could just follow up on Jackie's question about Munich. Vice President Vance's speech to the conference has ruffled quite a few feathers in Europe.
What did he say to ruffle them? I don't know.
He was talking about the freedom of speech and migration in Europe. Do you believe that European leaders have a fundamentally different view of the world than this administration's?
Well, I heard his speech, and I tell you, you're talking about JD's speech, right?
Yes, sir.
I heard his speech, and he talked about freedom of speech, and I think it's true in Europe. It's losing. They're losing their wonderful right of freedom of speech. I see it. I mean, I thought he made a very good speech, actually, a very brilliant speech. Yeah. Europe has to be careful. And he talked about immigration. And Europe has a big immigration problem. Just take a look at what's happened with crime. Take a look at what's happening in various parts of Europe. I thought his speech was very well received, actually. I've heard very good remarks.
And in regards to Ukraine as well, yesterday you mentioned that you thought Ukraine's NATO aspirations were one of the main reasons that the war broke out. Who do you blame for the war, Ukraine or Russia?
Well, I think that there were a lot of people to blame. All I can say is very simply, if I were president, that war would never have happened. And you know what else wouldn't have happened? The Middle East wouldn't be all blown up, and October 7th wouldn't have happened either. Those two areas, you wouldn't have inflation, you wouldn't have October 7th, you wouldn't have Russia and Ukraine fighting. None of those things would have happened if I were president.
Mr. President?
Yeah, please.
You mentioned auto tariffs the other day.
Yeah.
When do you plan to unroll?
Howard, I'd say over the next, sometime, or maybe around April 2nd. I would have done them on April 1st. Believe it or not, I'm a little superstitious. No, literally, we had it planned for April 1st. I said, let's make it April 2nd. You know how much money that costs? That costs a lot of money just that one day, but we're going to do it on April 2nd, I think. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
The lead prosecutor in Eric Adams' case resigned today, saying anyone who didn't press forward would be a coward. What's your reaction to that and to the overall implication that politics were at play here?
Well, I don't know about it. I mean, obviously, I'm not involved in that. But I would say this, that if they had a problem, and these are mostly people from the previous administration, you understand, so they weren't going to be there anyway. They were going to all be gone or dismissed. If not, they know on Tuesday they're all being dismissed. You know, the whole country is being, because what you do is you come in and you put new people in. So when you say resign, they're going to be gone anyway. But I know nothing about the individual case. I know that they didn't feel it was much of a case. They also felt that it was unfair with the election. Look, I would know that better than anybody because I was weaponized more than any human being in the history probably of the world. And I won the election in a landslide, winning all 7 swing states, winning the popular vote and everything else. Because the people got it. It was weaponized. And I was weaponized literally weeks before the election. But I think there's also something to be said. I read that. There's something to be said for what they were doing. It looked to me to be very political. But why didn't they bring this up like 4 or 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, or whenever it happened? You know, they just sat around and didn't complain. Then all of a sudden they complain, and they know they're all being dismissed anyway. So, you know, that's the way it is. That's called politics, I guess.
Mr. President?
Yeah, please.
Earlier this week, you predicted that all hell would break loose if Hamas didn't hand over all of their hostages. What do you expect to happen tomorrow in terms of
I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow at 12 o'clock. It was up to me. I'd take a very hard stance. I can't tell you what Israel's going to do. But I watched the last people come out, and I looked at a before and an after picture. One guy was a big, strong, healthy guy. You could say he was a little bit overweight. He's not overweight anymore. He looks like he just came out of the Holocaust. It looks like a Holocaust picture. I've looked at him for a long time, and they've been treated very badly. A young lady came out last week. Her hand was blown off. I mean, literally, her hand was trying to stop a bullet that was headed for her face. She put up her hand. She goes like this and wiped out her fingers and a lot of her hand. Now, I would take a different stance, but it depends. Look, it depends what Bibi's going to do. It depends what Israel's going to do. But and now I understand they've totally changed. Hamas has totally changed. They want to release hostages now again. But you have to see, this started by them saying, we're not going to release the hostages as we said we were. I said, good. You have till 12 o'clock on Saturday, which is tomorrow at 12 o'clock to do it. And we didn't hear anything. Then all of a sudden, 2 days ago, they said, no, we've decided we're going to release the hostages. So, but I actually think they should release all of the hostages. Remember, they're probably as bad as they looked. I mean, I don't like to say that, but they look real bad 4 days ago, 5 days ago when I saw them. And the young ladies that came out were treated really badly. You don't know what happened, but I do. They were treated really badly. But as bad as they look, the ones that follow probably will look a lot worse. I think they're sending out their most healthy. And they've been hit hard on that, Hamas. So they probably didn't want to release. But they changed their mind. I said 12 o'clock tomorrow, and all of a sudden, 2 days ago, yesterday, they said they're going back to releasing. But this all started by them saying, we are not going to release any more hostages. And then yesterday they said they are going to release the hostages. But I think they should release all of the hostages.
About 75,000 workers took this deferred resignation. It's a little bit short of the 5 to 10% goal you were hoping to hit. Do you think you'll have to make up the rest of that number in
No,
layoffs?
look, that's 75,000 more than we would have had, and nobody knows what that final number is, because in the end, I think a lot of people aren't going to show up to work. A lot of people, they got used to staying home and quote, working. But, you know, I wonder if they had other jobs or other things. You know, they have a lot of problems with that. No, 75,000 is a lot of people. And we paid them well. You know, we gave them a lot of months of severance pay, if you call it that. But no, I think you'll probably have some more too, in addition. It's a big, tremendous saving for our government. We want to downsize government, but make it better. Run it better, but downsize. Yeah, please.
So can I ask about the UK? I understand that you had a phone call with Keir Starmer yesterday.
I did. I just signed a letter to him. He asked for a meeting, and I agreed to the meeting. We're going to have a friendly meeting. Very good. We have a lot of good things going on. But he asked to come and see me, and I just accepted his asking.
Do you have a date for that, sir? And what do you hope to
Very soon. I think he wants to come next week or the week after.
And what do you hope to discuss?
I don't know. It was his request, not mine. But, you know, I've met him twice already. We get along very well. He's a very nice guy. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Brian.
Will there be carve-outs, sir?
Thank you, press. Thank
in
you.
the tariffs?
Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you, guys.